Cryptographic Enforceability. Why most assets should never be tokenized. Flint West reporting. Listen, everybody wants to be the wizard who turns lead into gold. Everybody wants to be the group that takes some dusty, regulated, lawsuit-infused Wall Street object and puts it on chain like that's a baptism, like the blockchain is holy water. But here's the line nobody wants to draw, because it ruins the party. Tokenization does not change what an asset is. It changes how it moves. That's it. That's the whole magic trick. And once we understand that, the entire industry splits into two worlds. 1, assets that can be owned by cryptography. 2, assets that can only be owned by law. And the second group, that's where the nightmares live. Section 1, the original temptation. Let's tokenize STRC on Lightning. This is how it starts. We see a TradFi yield product, STRC, preferred stock, 9 to 11%, whatever the number is this week. And we think, just tokenize it, put it on Lightning, taproot assets, done. And that instinct is not dumb. It's actually the correct engineering reflex. Reduce friction, increase portability, improve settlement. But then we hit the thing Grok tried to say politely, and we said out loud, STRC comes with baggage we cannot just shed. Exactly, because STRC is not just an asset. STRC is a stack. Corporate law, transfer agents, shareholder registries, securities regulation, disclosure regimes, market surveillance, corporate actions like dividends, resets, splits, and voting rights, enforcement by courts, not code. So if we tokenize STRC, we are not creating a clean digital bearer object. We are creating a digital mask for a legal instrument that still lives in the legal world. And the moment we ask the real question, can this be made peer-to-peer like cash, the illusion collapses. Because cash has finality, and securities have compliance gravity. Section 2. Tokenization does not remove gravity. It concentrates it. This is the part that separates people who write threads from people who build reality. When we tokenize a regulated asset, we do not escape regulation. We import it into the system. And now the shiny crypto rails are dragging. Know your customer gates, jurisdictional restrictions, transfer limitations, clawbacks and rescissions. Who is allowed to hold this? What happens if keys are lost? What about estates? What about fraud? Suddenly, we do not have a permissionless asset. We have a database with extra steps, a fancy settlement layer wrapped around the same old legal apparatus. So the question becomes, what advantage is there to tokenize it at all? And now we are in the truth zone. Section 3. What tokenization is actually good for? Pipes, not payloads. Tokenization improves pipes, not payloads. It can give us faster settlement, closer to real time instead of multi-day cycles. Around-the-clock transfer rails. Lower friction for moving claims. Better collateral mobility for institutions. Finer granularity and fractional access. Programmable distribution in a controlled, permissioned sense. These are plumbing upgrades, real, useful, but not revolutionary in the ownership sense, because if the asset is enforced by courts, then the token is merely a receipt that still points back to the court system. So the real value is operational efficiency, especially for institutions who live and die by settlement and collateral. That's why tokenized treasuries get attention, not because they are freedom money, because they are balance sheet lubricant. Section 4. Why gold tokens make more sense than stock tokens. Then we ask the clean question. Why tokenize gold into XAUT or PAX-G? There is no yield. Exactly, because gold is not supposed to yield. Gold is a monetary asset, not a productive asset. Tokenizing gold is one of the few real-world asset tokenizations that has a coherent story, because gold's core problem is not return. It is portability. Gold's superpower is preserving purchasing power. Gold's weakness is moving through modern networks. So tokenization gives gold divisibility, transportability, instant settlement between venues, usability inside digital markets as collateral, around-the-clock mobility without shipping bars. It still has custodian risk, always, but conceptually it is clean. We are not pretending gold became something else. We are just making gold easier to use. That's honest tokenization. But when equities are tokenized and people start talking like a new kind of cash has been invented, that's when the lies start. Section 5. The NFT will fix it moment. Then comes the brilliant pivot. What if we make it an NFT mechanism? Denominations, $5, $10, $20, cash-like, yield attaches. Yield is claimed by connecting, done. This is where most people would clap and say Web3 solves it. But here's the cold water. An NFT does not erase the legal nature of the thing it represents. If the NFT is backed by STRC, tied to STRC dividends, marketed as 10% yield, and reliant on an issuer's ongoing payout behavior, then it is not cash. It is a coupon-bearing instrument. It is a note. It is a security-shaped object wearing a digital costume. Regulators do not care if it is ERC 721, taproot assets, or carved into stone tablets. They look at the economic reality. Are people buying this expecting profit from someone else's efforts? If yes, a security has been created. And Lightning, for all its beauty, is not an Ethereum-style smart contract world where the protocol itself manages rebasing balances and yield entitlements. Lightning moves value fast. It does not run a dividend engine. So the yield-attached cash NFT ends up being issuer accounting off-chain, periodic distributions by the issuer, compliance constraints if it touches the public, dispute resolution by humans, custody and redemption policies, which is fine, but it is not the permissionless bearer dream. It is traditional finance with a different interface. This content is brought to you by Bobby Giggs. Promote your brand here and reach a wide audience across platforms like YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. Follow the links in the description to get started. Section 6. And then we hit the real wall. Physical custody without cryptographic enforceability. This is where the whole thing crystallizes. We arrive at the test. If custody is not cryptographic, it is not crypto native. Then comes the perfect follow-up. So classic cars and Pokemon cards are no good? Now the picture becomes obvious. These examples make the boundary visible. A classic car. If one party holds the tokenized Ferrari, but another party holds the keys in the garage, who owns the Ferrari? Not the party with the private key, the party with the physical key and the legal title. So the token is a story, a claim, a receipt, and if the custodian disappears, the token holder does not drive anything. A Pokemon card, same deal. Tokenize a Charizard and everything sounds great. But the real value is authenticity, condition, and possession. If the vault operator swaps the card, loses it, or disputes it, the token becomes a complaint form. Crypto cannot seize physical reality. Private keys do not open garages. Private keys do not stop substitution in a vault. Which brings us to the master question. If the custodian disappears, does the token holder still have the asset? Bitcoin, yes. Ethereum, yes. Classic card, no. Pokemon card, no. STRC, no. Because STRC lives inside registries, laws, and courts. That is the line. That is cryptographic enforceability. Section 7. The framework, 2 worlds, 1 boundary. Now we can say it cleanly. There are cryptographically enforceable assets and legally enforceable assets. Cryptographically enforceable assets are controlled by keys. They settle by code. They do not need permission. They can be bearer-like. They can be sovereign. They can be cash-like. Legally enforceable assets settle by institutions. They require identity, registries, courts, discretionary managers, or physical custody. They can be tokenized, but only as plumbing, not as liberation. And that is why most tokenization narratives feel like religion. They are trying to use code to solve problems that are fundamentally about people, and the world is still run by people. Section 8. The uncomfortable conclusion. This is the line that matters. We need natively digital assets, assets with no baggage from real-world assets. Because if we want the true crypto advantage, permissionless ownership, we need assets that are born inside cryptography, not assets born inside courtrooms. That is why native digital yield is so rare. Because yield usually comes from deploying capital, underwriting risk, managing something, enforcing claims, collecting payments, doing work. Those are legal and institutional activities. So when crypto tries to create yield cash, it usually reintroduces leverage, maturity mismatch, issuer trust, bank-run dynamics, regulation, because we cannot have cash-like finality and issuer-like yield promises without recreating the banking system. And if we recreate the banking system, we recreate the collapses. Section 9. The map. Why most assets should never be tokenized. We arrive at a clean litmus test that cuts through the hype. If an asset requires any of the following, tokenization becomes a wrapper, not ownership. Identity coupling. Who is allowed to hold it? Discretionary management, where ongoing effort creates returns. Physical control, where custody is not cryptographic. Courts as the final arbiter. Reversibility expectations like clawbacks and chargebacks. disputed provenance that turns tokens into lawsuits, continuous maintenance obligations such as repairs, insurance, or taxes, retail money-like yield marketing that attracts regulatory attention. When two or more of these are present, tokenization does not create a crypto-native asset. It creates a permissioned claim in a crypto costume. Section 10. So what can we say now? We can say this with conviction because the path was actually walked. Tokenization is not alchemy. It does not remove legal gravity. It does not create bearer ownership. It does not turn securities into cash. Tokenization improves pipes, not payloads. And the boundary is cryptographic enforceability. If an asset cannot be controlled solely by a private key, then it cannot be truly crypto-native. It will always re-import trust, law, and custodians, which means the future splits cleanly into two tracks. 1. Crypto-native assets that are bearer and permissionless. 2. Tokenized traditional finance that is faster and more efficient, but still governed by law. The mistake is confusing the second track for the first. Conclusion. So STRC on Lightning? A representation can be moved. Sure, but it cannot be turned into digital cash without dragging the courthouse behind it. And that is the work. That is the proof of work. Not mining blocks, but mining clarity. Because the part no one wants to do is admit the boundary exists. Now the boundary is visible. The framework is clear. The line does not bend. If custody is not cryptographic, it is not crypto-native. And most assets should never be tokenized, not because crypto is weak, but because reality is heavier than marketing. That is Flint West.